Welcome to this week's Workshop Wednesday, where we're going to go through using Google Sheets with Looker Studio. Welcome, my name is Julie Brody. I'm the Director of Measurement for MeasurementMarketing.io. Been building actual dashboards for a really long time and then became a measurement marketer and started teaching measurement marketing to people like you. I'm still the lead account manager for all of our dedicated measurement management clients. And we point that out just so you know that myself, along with our amazing team of instructors, have actually been in seeing lots of different types of setups, and we actually really love a good puzzle to solve. So if you are back there in the Measurement Marketing Academy, going through our courses, going through and using our tools, please reach out to us. Let us know you're there. Let us know if you have any questions. We'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us in the Winner Circle, which is our community. We'd love to hear from you. And as we go through this particular workshop, always remember one thing. Take one thing, make it your own, and then come back, watch this again, and get something else. So let's go ahead and get started. Using Google Sheets with Looker Studio. And as always, before we go through and actually get into the fun stuff, we're going to go through the foundation of all things measurement marketing, which is called the Measurement Marketing Framework, where we all have done this. We've started out marketing in the blind, where we really don't know what's working. We're walking around the dark. We have zero visibility. And we want to be able to reliably grow those revenue and profits. We want to know what button to push, lever to pull, what actions to take in order to achieve the results we want to achieve. And to do that, we go through our framework, which is plan, build, launch, where we ask the right questions, get the right information, and actually take the actions we need to take to move forward. Then after we have that, we go through results, traffic, and story, truly understanding what traffic is giving you the result and building that story, truly understanding what's going on. Then we listen, forecast, and optimize. And that means we're actually understanding, we're looking at the data, we understand the data, we're not having to dive deep into analyze, we're just listening, and then we're forecasting and optimizing. And again, this is called the Measurement Marketing Framework. If you have never seen this, that is okay. We have an entire course called Win the Measurement Marketing Framework that we'll mention at the very end of this that you can have access to for free. Now, one rule to remember when it comes to Google Sheets and Looker Studio. One rule to remember. If you can get the data into Sheets, you can get the data into Looker Studio. So that's the thing to remember. So if you're like, trying to use some other tool and exporting or anything like that, if you could get it into Sheets, you can get it into Looker Studio. So let's go ahead and take up some examples of what it might look like to have Sheets data in your Looker Studio. And our first example is actually going to come from our toolbox. So if you're back here in the Measurement Marketing Academy, you're going to scroll down till we have our toolbox dashboard. And then we're going to choose this little guy right here. This is one of the tools that we have. And we're going to see that here. Guess what? Absolutely everything on this entire document is from a Google Sheet. Yes, obviously we can still get this data from Google Analytics or whatever tool we want to, but for the sake of keeping it an easy template and not having to deal with any sort of issues of availability or anything like that, making it people requesting information or requesting access and all these other different weird things, it was just easier to make it work with a sheet. So what in the world does that massive sheet look like? Probably something you will never need to build, but I just want to show you that what is possible. So this is the Facebook. Again, you will probably never have to build anything like this, but this is just showing you like, hey, we have a date. We have, all of the dimensions that we need, all of the different things, and then metrics are the numbers. So metrics are the things you do math with. And so we have all of these listed and date by date. Again, just demo data, like data that we have made up ourselves just so we can put it into a dashboard to make pretty so you guys can use it for an example and duplicate it and put it in yours. So this is from a spreadsheet. This is from a spreadsheet. Guess what? The spreadsheet will also allow us to do, hey, let's change the traffic. Obviously, yes, you can do the exact same thing in Google Analytics as well with that data. But what is another example of why you would want to use a spreadsheet instead of your Google data or, in addition to your Google data? Well, let's say we actually do have an example. We're running a webinar with another team, and we actually have a dashboard where, hey, there's some registration going on the site, but we also have like this one-click off-site type registrations that are happening as we go through, and so they're not happening on the site. We can't see the information. So what we are doing is we actually have a sheet that their team is updating that we have access to. So they're coming in every morning and manually inputting this information. So meaning that someone goes in this case it's Zoom, so they're logging into Zoom and they're going through and adding this information, and we're just displaying it inside of Looker Studio in this way. If we had more time, I would probably change it into some sort of actually time chart that we could go through and kind of see the numbers kind of climb up. But this is just getting started. And so for the sake of just keeping things simple, we just made it a little scorecard here. And so if you're familiar with Looker Studio, that is what this thing is called right here. And if you're wondering, well, how do we get the progress chart? We just chose to show as progress. Then we have a value and we changed this to 300. So our forecast, our goal is 300 registrations. And as we go through and add more numbers, we'll see that climb up and go through there. So that is just a really simple example of why you might want to use a Google Sheet in addition to your Google data. And you're like, well, why are these numbers different? Well, again, these are the people that are registering through the site, and the additional ones are people that are registering off-site, like meaning they're not touching our site. Maybe they're doing a one-click, and Zoom is automatically registering, so they're never actually touching your site. So we have this, and then we also see how the site is performing, meaning is this registration page doing its job? And we can compare traffic sources for that as well. So let's go back to our spreadsheet example. And you're probably wondering, well, how do you actually format the spreadsheet so you can just have a number like this? Maybe you're doing sales, like people doing phone calls, or leads, or something else like this, where you're like, well, you have the total, but then you have your site number. How do you show both? Well, let's go ahead and show that example. We're going to bring over an incognito window. We're going to have a brand new actual Looker Studio doc here. And so we're going to connect into Google Sheets. And then we're going to choose this one, which is just an example, a spreadsheet that I just created, and we're going to go ahead and add it in. Technically, there's nothing in the spreadsheet because we're going to see a bunch of blanks because you can see this is the spreadsheet. So the first tip for your Looker Studio spreadsheets is always make sure there is some sort of date, and make sure it is formatted in a useful date way and formatted the same way all the way down. Preferably your date is the first column. If it's in another column, you just have to identify it when you connect it to Looker Studio. And we'll talk about that in here in just a moment. And so we're just going to say this is going to be 112024, and then 122024, and then we're just going to select these two. I'm going to hover and get to my crosshairs there and drag and drop until we have some dates and data and going all the way through. So we have our date, and we're going to come back over here, and I want to show you a couple different things that we can do. So if I click on this and hit the refresh, this is only refreshing the data and not actually the data source. So we're going to show you what that means. So here it's not doing anything. It's already done this thing and it actually didn't do anything. So what we need to do is click on our data source and we need to choose refresh fields. What it's going to do is going to go look and say, hey, is there any new fields? And the way we've connected it, it's looking at this header here. So we said refresh fields and say, hey, the new thing we have is date. So we're going to go ahead and apply. And now we have a date field here. And this is where we would want to make sure it's identified as a date, no matter what column it is and anything like that. We want to make sure it's identified as a date. That's really important. So we're going to say done. Now let's go ahead and enter some sort of random data in here. So now we're going to say, let's say this is registrations. And we're just going to enter in some random numbers, 5 and 22, and just going to keep going down with random stuff. And now we have data coming through. Let's go back to our report here. And if we go through and, again, refresh data, That's not going to do anything because there's nothing for it to refresh. The dates didn't change. But if we come in here and again refresh our fields, and we're going to go apply, it says, hey, we saw the new one, and this is now registering as a number, or it's identifying itself as a number, which is perfectly fine. If it was a percentage, meaning if it was a conversion rate that we're calculating inside the spreadsheet, we just want to make sure, hey, we want to call it a percent. It makes it a little bit formatting easier. You don't have to constantly tell it what to do over here. So now we're in, this is a just a regular old chart. So we're going to go ahead and put in date, and this is looking at the record count. It's counting how many records, how many things it has for those dates. And so what we want to change this to is the metric that we have available. So we're going to choose registrations. And so now we have this. I want to actually zoom in forever so we can see this a little bit easier. And so now what we can see is we have the date, and we're actually going to go ahead and have in our sorting is going to go by date, and we're going to do it ascending so we can see everything up here. So we have 5, 10, 5, all these other things. We have all of these. Now I'm going to come through and I'm going to change everything to 100, 100, 100, and we're just going to copy all this down, and we're going to say all these are 100. And then we're going to come back over here. Remember how this little guy over here did not do anything before? Watch this. We are now refreshing the data, and it's grabbing all of those. And so that is what this little guy does here. So if you are working in a Google Sheet and you want to force the report to change, you want to force it to go update and grab the new information, technically this works for any of your data sources. This is what you choose. It is not this thing. It is not the other one of refreshing your fields in the data source. That is this if you want to refresh your data. So that's your one really big pro tip, because we have to use that all the time. Then here are some other pro tips for you if you are using a sheet. Let's say we decide to call this, instead of registrations, we're going to call this daily registrations. Let's go through and see what is going to happen inside of Looker Studio. And if we refresh the data, is anything going to happen? Ooh, something did happen. Why did that happen? Because it's saying, hey, something has changed. Notify the source owner. So to refresh. So it's telling us to refresh. So let's say, okay, let's go back to our data source and let's refresh our fields. And then, so it's saying, hey, here's your new field. Here's what's missing. So it's identified, hey, I don't see this thing over here. It's not even recognizing, hey, the column was renamed. It doesn't know that. It just says, hey, this thing is missing and this new thing is here. So we're going to go ahead and apply. And so now we see daily registrations. It's still identified as a number, and we can have the aggregation if we needed to change that. So now we're going to say done, but the chart did not fix itself. The reason it did not fix itself is because it's still looking at this invalid metric. It's still looking for registrations. So we're going to come through here and just fix this. So your pro tip for this is don't change the header names too often. Get everything kind of figured out what you want and then leave it there. Don't change your headers. And so, or you tell your clients or whoever your stakeholder is, don't change the headers or they will constantly break your report and you constantly have to go in there and fix it. So the next thing that you would probably want to do is how do you add in new columns and how do you address those? So the other way is saying total registrations, and so this is where we can have a formula, and so there, that's not what I want to do, and then we'll say equals this plus that, and then we're just going to drag that bad boy down. Get rid of all that fun stuff. Okay, so now we have a total registration number. So let's go back to our Looker Studio. Let's then, again, because we understand how this works now, we're going to go through our data source because we only have our two columns and we want to have that total registration. So we're going to refresh our fields. It says, hey, here's something new. We're going to apply. And now we have this. We're just double checking to make sure it's choosing the right format. If not, then we would adjust it for ourselves. And then we're going to say done. And then what we can do is now we're going to add a new chart. Let's go ahead and do a time series. This is what we're working on for our current webinar. So once we have a few more days in here, we'll go ahead and do it this way. And so right now it's saying daily registrations, and because our daily registrations is 100, it's just showing us this big blue line going all the way across. But what if we want to do total registrations? We can do it this way. You can see the total going up. Technically, we can also, just going to show you a pro tip, but if you didn't want to do the total, you didn't want to do that, you want to do show daily registrations, you can also come into the style and show cumulative. Same thing, but just a couple different options. It's just showing you how you can connect Google Sheets inside of Looker Studio and use the information in various different ways. So what if you didn't have a date? Let's go into that example. So this is going to be example 2. And so what if we just had something that said webinar sales? That's all we're going to do, webinar sales, or actually we're going to say phone sales. Phone sales, because that could be an example. Maybe there isn't a date on here. Maybe it's a really long process, so there really isn't truly a date. And for whatever reason, even though you really should put a date on all of this stuff. But we're just going to use this example. Let's say there were 7 phone sales. So we're going to go through the same steps. We're going to go through our resources. We're going to manage added data sources. We're going to choose to add a new one. We're going to go to our sheet because each tab is its own data source. So for example 2, we need to do that. So now we're going to come into the spreadsheet, and now we see the second tab. All right, so now if I go through and add some sort of chart, we'll just do a regular old scorecard. And so now we are looking at, I'm going to hover on this, and so we can hover and we can see the name of the spreadsheet and then a space, hyphen, space, and example 2. That's what this is. And then there's example 2. So that's what we're seeing here. And right now it says a record count. It's just kind of grabbing that default thing. So what if I say we want that to be the thing? And so the sum of them is now saying 7. And so if I did 7 and then I did 11, and let's see if we get a total of 18 once we refresh the data. And so now we do. So that's another way of doing this. Obviously, if we were to change this chart to a time series, it would kind of freak itself out because it does not have it doesn't have another dimension, and it doesn't have a date range. So going that route of choosing different charts and stuff, you might be limited if you don't have that date. So that's why it's always best to make sure you have that date, or just know whenever you're going through and building your spreadsheet, you might be limited on what charts and stuff you are going to be able to use. That's why it's always so important to go through and make sure that you have a proper plan for your dashboard, and you whiteboard it out and you go through these things so you kind of know what it is that you're going to want before you go through and start building, especially if you're building a spreadsheet. You kind of are able to put it in a proper format. So one more pro tip for you. You got so many pro tips. We're going to go through and I want to show you something else that we didn't quite cover. I want to go through and edit my connection. Maybe you're working with a client that has different kinds of setup. So maybe it says something like insert row above. It's going to be like January. And then, and so technically the thing that you want to use is this row right here for the header, not the first row. And it says use the first row. So what if we don't want to use the first row as the header? Then you're going to have to go through and just kind of walk through those different steps for this. I would always encourage you to not format it this way. It's so much easier if you just keep it like this and, use your spreadsheet skills to build your own spreadsheet and connect to other spreadsheets if you have to, just because things kind of can get wonky if you're having to do it this way. It's possible, but it really is just a little bit wonky for that. So keeping it very clean, one header, having clean rows and columns. Be aware that if you were to do a summary row, like let's say this, and then so if I did a sum of all the things here. So now this is part of our numbers. So let's go back to our registrations, cancel that. And then if we come down all the way through, let's make sure that we have a date. Let's just say we're dragging and dropping our dates. And we have that. And we're going to refresh our data. We're going to show a summary row as well. And so now we see, oh, January 29th, we actually have that, even though it was part of a summary. Or we can say sum. We just want to say total. And watch what happens with that. So this is where you have to be really careful with your spreadsheet formatting. And so here, oh, it's grabbing that, and it just changed our dates. Let's go back and see what happened. And so we have that. So we just want to be really careful that we don't do anything like that. So this is where you have to make sure that the team, whoever you're working with, hey, don't do those things. Don't break my spreadsheets. And you can even see this made itself have an error from that too. So we're going to fix all that. Now it works again. So that's where you have to be really careful with your spreadsheets and the formatting. But if you keep columns and rows and keep it nice and easy and simple, you'll be good. And here's a pro tip for you if you're wondering what is a column, what is a row. Your columns are the ones that go up and down, kind of like a tall building, and your rows are the things that go across horizontal, like a boat is going horizontal. So a boat you row, and a column is more of those buildings. That's how you kind of know. So if you're ever hearing the jargons of columns and rows, you're going to see those different things popping up throughout here. So those are some more fun pro tips for you. So that is the basics of connecting Google Sheets into Looker Sheets. So what was your one thing? We'd love to hear it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Let us know what your one thing is as well. And if you want to know more about this thing we call the Measurement Marketing Framework, and you want to know how to get some of those free tools, that dashboard that we showed at the very beginning, if you want to know how to get those for free, you can join the Measurement Marketing Academy Toolbox membership for free. If you want to know how to get access to some of those different courses that we mentioned that are going above and beyond, we mentioned Ask Instructor or talking to us on the Winner Circle. That is the paid membership, but if you want to check out see which one would be the best option for you, just go to measure.tips/getacademy or click the link below. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know if you have any questions about any of this. We'd love to hear from you. And so that is it, using Google Sheets with Looker Studio. We'll see you next time.